Hello and welcome back to Wide Angle. Here my friend Mohan Guruswamy, he is almost sounding like a cat who's seen cream. He sees $3.7 trillion lying in China, $1.x trillion lying in Japan, and he says, now, here's money for jam, let's get it over into our... But don't forget, where is the United States in this game? You can't play games without the United States of America. Where is Americans in this game? Zorawar.
I don't see why the Americans should have a role in how India is financing its industry, because
but they will.
The Indian economy is not, India is not closing itself out to, India is not going to close itself out to any major player. India is going to draw, I mean, if you look at the relationship with the United States and India at the highest levels in the Indian economy, that's probably the most profitable, high value sectors that are driven with the West. So in fact, if anything, engaging Asia is sort of a rebalance for India to try and sort of cultivate new areas, because you've been so dependent on the EU and the United States, which is natural. They're the richest economies.
I will make an interjection here.
Yeah.
We mustn't forget that China's growth was financed by American capital.
Yes.
And Japanese capital.
Yes.
Japanese growth was financed by American capital. We've come to a time in our history where America has nothing in its pockets. There is money in the private sector that only moves for certain reasons. Here we're looking for long gestation funds. We're looking for funds over 30, 40 years. That's what infrastructure funds are. And that is government funds. You know, that is money which only governments can control. So America is broke. So don't look at America for infrastructure. America can give you a lot of solace and talk, but beyond that, there's nothing in their pockets. You know, the West, Europe, is also just as bankrupt. So I think we have to take hard-headed decisions. We needn't get sucked into their pressures. And we have people here who work full-time, overtime, you know, saying how our interests coincide with America's interests. Our interests coincide with nobody's interests. Our interests are our interests. Our interests are that to get economic growth going, get moving on that track. And we should act on that. Our interests are our own security. Because if something happens, these guys are not going to come and help bail us out. There will be a lot of talk. At that time, they will all apply sanctions to you equally.
I see your point, and I agree with you. But Zorawar, you yourself, in fact, in an article I was reading, you said the Indian elite is still averse to unhinging itself from the United States, basically. The locus of power is still there as far as the Indian elite is concerned. Could you, would you dilate on that?
I see a lot of parallels, in fact, with the way Russia sort of, in India, we've been looking west for a long, long time. And fair enough, that was the right way to be, because those were the most dynamic centers of power for the last 200-300 years. But now you have a situation where you have new rising powers, and the new great powers are no longer going to be coming from the Anglo-American world. So we have to adapt and react to that changing geopolitical, geoeconomic development, which means that if you are going to sustain your own growth, you have to be cultivating new actors who are on your periphery and not too far away from you. So that's the argument, that your worldview has to be changing with changing situations and the context.
The Putin, at a recent briefing with journalists in St. Petersburg, let me read out what he says. This is what he's saying. I'm quoting Putin. The meeting in Shanghai several days ago and the documents that we signed prove without any doubt that relations between the People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation have advanced to a new level. Over the recent years, we noted on numerous occasions the high level of cooperation between our countries, but with the results that were achieved in recent days in Shanghai and the agreements that were reached, we have every reason to believe that yet another step has been made in enhancing our trust-based dialogue and bringing our strategic partnership to new heights. Hyperbole or fact?
It's fairly based and rooted in fact. There's a $400 billion oil contract between these two guys now. And that is going to make a big difference to China's economy, China's economic energy security, to Russia's earnings.
And the pipes.
And the pipes. You see, so all these things, this is big. And President Putin has reset his relations with China. China has moved from, is somewhere between being a good friend and an ally, a little more than a partner. But, so the transitant relationship is very important. Putin has been put there by the behavior of the West on Syria, on Libya, unilateral actions, Ukraine, even Iran, because American and Western relationships come with too many conditionalities, that they will not judge you by you, but they judge you by what you're doing with Iran, what you're doing on Syria. Now, there is a commonality of views on how we Russians would see Ukraine and how we would see northern Sri Lanka. Would we then keep quiet if something similar happens in northern Sri Lanka? Now, I think this is something President Putin has been trying to drive to us also. But I think we went through a phase where we were too enamored by the land of our children. I call America the land of our children because all of our children are living there, And many of them, upper class elite, and that's why we're all hooked up with America and we travel there. That's our cultural lodestar. But there are too many conditionalities which doesn't serve us. I think we have to look at things realistically to see what serves India.
This kind of vocabulary, this kind of talk, just go back to the year 2006. Just imagine the ink, it's all working up to the Indo-US deal. And all talk and any word against the United States is anathema to the regime and to everybody. And how the world is it only 208 that has done it? Is it only the collapse of Lehman Brothers? Is that the turning point?
Well, that is one turning point. The other turning point is a lady who didn't want to pay her maidservant market salaries. And who got nailed by an Indian American in the process. I think they put our relationship back on even keel. We know where we stand. At the end of the day, they are there and we are here. So I think that helped a lot in balancing, putting this relationship, taking the pink
locus
out of the glasses.
Now comes the Secretary of Defense to complete the triangle, Chuck Hagel. Now he, in Singapore the other day, he called General Wong and the Chinese all sorts of names. And General Wong, and next morning they met. And Wong says, I am very impressed by your candor.
Absolutely. In fact, you're referring to the Shangri-La dialogue just last weekend.
Just day before yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was actually
for
the first time.
Is this another Kabuki number 2?
When Muhammad Ali was being drafted to go to Vietnam, he said, look, I ain't got no fight with them Kong. So I think, India could tell Mr. Hagel, I ain't got no with Mr. Wong, We've got nothing against Mr. Wong, But that is the thing. Why should we make somebody else's tussle ours?
But what is this another Kabuki act, you think?
It is a Kabuki act. All these are Kabuki, this thing, and we should learn to look at Kabuki as Kabuki, dispassionately. And
when you sort of threaten to go to war, but there's a
you don't take sides. You don't take sides. You say, okay, this is a great show. I'm watching it. And you come to your own conclusions.
So you're taking a very philosophical view of the Shangri-La dialogue, Zorawar.
When India looks at all these developments in the Asia Pacific, the one thing that stands out is every other state in the region has a territorial or dispute amongst themselves. You look at Japan, China, South Korea, Japan, North Korea, South Korea, Russia, Japan, United States, China, Philippines, China, Vietnam, China. India is the only one that has absolutely nothing with any of them, apart from the border dispute with China, which is on the Himalayan side. So now, given that situation, that can be an advantage if you are able to play your cards wisely.
Yes.
But beyond the point, you also have to choose the type of order that you seek. So India has I think Indian elites have been very clear that we don't want an Asia dominated by any single power. Now I think that says it for itself. We don't want an Asia dominated by China. We don't want an Asia dominated by any other collective security system.
I think there's another thing happening there.
So it's a multipolar Asia where you will have India and several other actors all participating in jostling for space. And can we establish the institutions to go along with that?
There's another thing happening also. You see, after the Olympics, China has went through a phase of great jingoism, assertiveness. And Chinese said nothing is impossible. We can send a man to space, we send a man to moon. We are like America. So therefore we want the world to treat us like America, and we will not be pushed around by American allies and cat's paws. Now China is also moving a little away from there. Last week I was in Shanghai. I went to a town called Xiamen, where I took one evening off and went and saw this new Zhang Yimou movie, Coming Home. It examines what happened to a family during the Cultural Revolution.
So there's
things changing in China, how they look at the world.
It's kind of catharsis.
So I think we've got to look at China with a little more sensitivity.
On that note, Mohan Guruswamy and Zorawar Daulet Singh, thank you very much indeed. We've had an interesting and very promising discussion, and maybe there will be another round when this triangle, as it is becoming a square. On that note, thank you very much.